For more than 4 decades, Jay Leno made America laugh. But behind the laughter was a quieter story, one that few ever truly knew. It wasn't about fame, cars, or late-night television. It was about a promise he made in 1980 and never broke. The story of the woman who stood beside him long after the applause faded, and how, at 75, Jay Leno finally said what he had spent a lifetime showing. The beginning of forever. In January 1976, Jay Leno was still just another struggling comedian chasing laughter in smoke-filled clubs. He had no fame, no fortune, only the hope that one day someone would notice. That night, he stepped onto the small stage of the Comedy Store in Los Angeles, his jokes landing one by one under the dim lights. Among the audience sat Mavis Nicholson, a woman who had come not for entertainment, but for business. She was a writer, there to network with producers and comedians. Romance wasn't even on her mind. But when Jay walked off the stage, sweaty, nervous, and smiling, something unexplainable passed between them. "That's the person I'm going to be with," Jay would later recall thinking. Mavis, always rational, tried to brush off the feeling, but something told her this was different. After his set, Jay approached her with the same charm he used on stage, but softer, more sincere. He invited her for coffee, and that conversation stretched late into the night. They talked about life, humor, books, and the quiet insecurity that came with trying to build a future in show business. Mavis was drawn to his simplicity. He wasn't boastful, just hard-working and kind. Jay, meanwhile, saw in her the intelligence and steadiness he lacked. That first night didn't end with promises, but it left both of them changed. Over the next few years, Jay's career began to move upward, one club at a time. He spent endless nights on the road performing for small audiences, often sleeping in his car to save money. Mavis stayed in Los Angeles, working as a freelance writer, keeping her own rhythm while silently cheering him on from afar. Their relationship didn't depend on constant presence. It was built on trust and understanding. In the rare moments they were together, the world felt complete. By the late 1970s, Jay started to think about permanence. He wasn't a romantic man, but he was practical. When he realized his life insurance wouldn't cover Mavis unless they were married, he made his decision. "I thought, well, if we get married, she'll be taken care of," he once explained. It was typical Jay, not poetic, but deeply loyal. On November 30th, 1980, the two exchanged vows in a simple ceremony at a friend's house. There were no cameras, no extravagance, only family, sincerity, and quiet laughter. Jay had chosen that date because it was the same day his parents married, a small tribute to where he came from. For Mavis, who had once vowed never to marry or have children, it was the first time she broke her own rule, because she knew she'd found the one person worth bending for. He was the destination, she later said. And from that moment on, Jay Leno's greatest act was not on television. It was the love story that began in that tiny comedy club and never truly ended. The rise of a legend and the woman behind him. The 1980s marked the decade when Jay Leno went from being a hard-working comic to a household name. For years, he had driven across the country in beat-up cars, performing in smoky clubs where the laughter barely covered the sound of clinking glasses. But slowly, his persistence paid off. His quick wit, clean humor, and relentless discipline caught the attention of television producers. He began appearing on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, and soon became one of its most popular guest hosts. By 1992, Jay Leno stood at the very center of American late-night television, succeeding Johnny Carson himself, an achievement that would define an era. Millions of viewers watched him nightly, but fame never changed his rhythm. When the cameras went dark, he returned home to the quiet, familiar world he shared with Mavis. Unlike most Hollywood couples, Jay and Mavis built their life on stillness. He worked on stage, She worked behind the scenes, managing their home and finances with quiet precision. She was not interested in glamour or celebrity, and that was exactly what Jay admired most. "Marry the person you wish you could be," he once said. "If I'd married another self-centered person, one of us would be dead." Mavis was the calm to his storm, intellectual, reserved, and deeply empathetic. While he thrived on laughter, she thrived on meaning. By the mid-1990s, Jay's fame was at its peak. He was winning Emmys, filling stadiums, and leading The Tonight Show to record ratings. Yet Mavis stayed deliberately out of view, dedicating herself to women's rights. In 1997, she became chair of the Feminist Majority Foundation's campaign to stop gender apartheid in Afghanistan, raising awareness about the Taliban's brutal restrictions on women and girls. She traveled, organized events, and used her platform to give a voice to the voiceless. Jay, ever the proud husband, often said she was the smartest person I know. Their bond was one of balance. Jay brought humor to the world. Mavis brought compassion. Together they created a marriage untouched by the chaos of Hollywood. They had no children, a decision they made early on. "It wasn't a sacrifice," Jay told Oprah Winfrey in 2002. "It just made life easier. We got to date for 40 years. They shared a simple, unspoken understanding. He chased his passion. She protected their peace." Through the fame, fortune, and endless headlines, Jay never forgot who grounded him. Behind every punchline, every monologue, and every standing ovation, there was Mavis, the steady presence who reminded him what mattered most. The world saw Jay Leno, the legend. But Mavis saw the man who came home every night, exhausted yet devoted, ready to trade the noise of applause for the quiet comfort of love. The war behind the curtain. By the late 2000s, Jay Leno was more than a comedian. He was an institution. For nearly 2 decades, he had become America's late-night constant, a familiar face, a voice of comfort at the end of long days. The Tonight Show wasn't just television, it was ritual. Jay's humor was safe, relatable, and utterly dependable. But beneath that calm exterior, television's biggest network was planning a storm that would nearly destroy his reputation and test the strength of his marriage. In 2004, NBC made a decision meant to shape the future of late-night TV. They announced that when Jay's contract expired in 2009, he would step aside for Conan O'Brien, the quirky red-headed host of Late Night. Jay accepted publicly, but privately he was uneasy. He wasn't ready to retire. Comedy was his life. Yet being the consummate professional, he honored the plan. In June 2009, Conan officially took over The Tonight Show, and Jay moved to a new experiment, The Jay Leno Show, airing at 10 p.m. The experiment failed almost instantly. Ratings plummeted. Viewers didn't like seeing Leno so early, and affiliates were losing money. In January 2010, NBC panicked and proposed moving Jay back to 11:35 p.m. and pushing Conan's Tonight Show to 12:05 a.m. The move ignited outrage across the industry. Conan refused, saying, "I will not follow Jay at 12:05. The internet erupted. Late-night fans turned on each other. Media outlets painted Jay as a villain who stole his old job. He was mocked, booed at events, and vilified in the press. Through it all, Jay remained silent. He never lashed out, never fired back. Every night he walked on stage with the same polite smile, opened with a monologue, and moved on. When asked years later about that period, he simply said, "I have no regrets." It was the answer of a man who had learned to survive chaos through humor and restraint. But someone else refused to stay quiet. Mavis Leno, who had always avoided publicity, stepped forward in his defense. In a rare 2014 60 Minutes interview, she said she was very angry about how the situation had been twisted. "It wasn't what people think," she said firmly. "Jay didn't take anything back." That was not what happened. It was one of the few times she ever spoke publicly. and it showed how fiercely protective she was. To her, the man being attacked wasn't a celebrity. He was her husband, the same person who came home tired but kind, year after year. When Jay finally said goodbye to The Tonight Show for good in February 2014, the farewell was as understated as he was. A long list of celebrities filled the stage to honor him. The crowd rose in applause that seemed to go on forever. Jay's final words summed up his journey. "When I started, I was a kid with a dream. Now I leave it to someone else's dream," and when the cameras stopped, he stepped backstage, where Mavis was waiting, just as she had been every night for 22 years. The spotlight dimmed, but what mattered most had never changed. The world saw a man closing a chapter. He saw the same woman who had been there since the beginning, smiling back through the quiet. Fire, scars, and a promise kept. After leaving television, Jay returned to his first passion, cars. Jay Leno's Garage, which premiered in 2015, became his new world. He spent days surrounded by engines, history, and memories. His collection grew to over 180 cars and 160 motorcycles. From a 1910 white steam car to a 1999 Y2K jet bike. Every vehicle had a story. But in November 2022, one of them almost took his life. While working beneath an antique car, a spark ignited the gas line. The fire spread in seconds. "I got a face full of gas," he recalled later. "Then the pilot light jumped and my face caught fire." He suffered third-degree burns on his face and hands and spent weeks in the hospital. Barely 2 months later, in January 2023, he was in another accident, a motorcycle crash that broke his collarbone, ribs, and kneecaps. In late 2024, he fell again, fracturing his wrist and cheek. 3 accidents in 2 years. For the man who had seemed untouchable, life had turned fragile. But Jay wasn't the only one fighting. Around the same time, Mavis began to show signs of cognitive decline. By early 2024, doctors diagnosed her with advanced dementia. She needed full-time care. Jay petitioned a Los Angeles court for legal guardianship, explaining that he wanted to manage her medical and financial affairs personally. In April 2024, the court approved. Her lawyer confirmed Mavis agreed to the arrangement and was receiving excellent care from her husband. In public, Jay spoke sparingly. In private, he lived his vows. "I like taking care of her," he told Graham Bensinger in 2025. "It's basically what we did before, except now I have to feed her and do all those things. But I like it. I like being needed." Those quiet words said everything. The quietest years. By 2025, Jay Leno had stopped touring long distances. He now performs short weekend shows, leaving Friday, returning by Saturday night, so he can be home every day. His mornings begin with breakfast, newspapers, and walking Mavis through their garden. Sometimes she knows who he is, sometimes she doesn't. But he keeps talking, telling her the same stories he's told 100 times. He says that when she laughs, even for a second, it feels like winning $1 million. In interviews, he avoids sentimentality, but there's tenderness behind every word. "I'm glad I didn't cut and run," he said. "I'm glad I didn't go chase some woman half my age. I'd rather be with her." His humor remains his shield. He jokes about their old car, a 1955 Buick Roadmaster, where they once had their first date and first experience. For their 25th anniversary, he tried to recreate that moment, driving back to the same spot, only to find a housing development where the old field used to be. "I hit the horn at 1 a.m., he laughed. "The guy came out yelling." Not quite the romantic moment I remembered. But beneath the joke lies a truth, that his memories with Mavis are the landmarks of his life. Even now, as her memory fades, he uses flashcards and photos to help her remember. "Honey, that's President Obama. "Remember we had dinner?" he says, and she shakes her head. He smiles and says, "Yeah, it was you." He finds humor in heartbreak, the same way he's always done, because laughter is how he learned to love. What love really means. When Jay Leno talks about marriage today, his words carry a weight they never did before. He doesn't mention fame, fortune, or even happiness. He speaks about something quieter: duty, commitment, and choice. "I've never been tested like this," he admitted in 2025. "I wasn't in the army. I didn't have to risk my life. This is my test, and I'm glad I'm living up to it." For a man who built his life on making millions laugh, his greatest performance now takes place away from any audience, inside a home where laughter has turned into memory. The man who once measured success in ratings now measures it in moments: a smile, a spark of recognition, a shared silence that feels like love remembered. The world remembers Jay Leno as the workhorse of television, the host who never missed a show. But he knows now that consistency on stage meant nothing compared to consistency at home. "Every morning I just think about whether she'll smile today," he told a friend. "If she does, that's enough." His home in Los Angeles has become a quiet shrine to the life they built together. The walls hold photographs of road trips, old talk show sets, and snapshots from their modest 1980 wedding. Mavis doesn't always recognize the woman in the pictures anymore, but Jay tells her the stories anyway. He jokes about the past, the same way he did on stage, except now his only audience is the woman he loves. "I still tell her the same old jokes," he once said, "and sometimes she laughs, and sometimes she doesn't. But that's okay. I just keep telling them." He has found a rhythm in caregiving that mirrors the discipline he once brought to comedy. Every day he cooks her breakfast, helps her dress, and walks with her through the garden. To outsiders, it might look like sacrifice, but to Jay, it's purpose. "You know, I actually like it," he confessed. "I like taking care of her. It's what I'm supposed to do." Those words, simple and unadorned, reveal more about love than any poem ever could. For Leno, love isn't about romance or perfection. It's about showing up, about doing the hard, unglamorous work when no one's watching, about keeping a promise made decades ago, long after the memory of that promise has faded. "That's what defines a marriage," he said quietly. "That's what love is." And maybe, after all these years, that's his truest punchline. Not one that makes you laugh, but one that makes you believe. After all the fame, fortune, and laughter, Jay Leno's greatest legacy isn't comedy, it's loyalty. Do you believe that true love still exists in Hollywood today? Let me know your thoughts below. And if this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories of love, fame, and resilience.